What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. A little bit of a change of pace today. As you can tell, I'm usually joined by my conversation partner, Spexo. But today we are joined by Mike Billand. This is the person that we truly hope will unseat RINO, Dan Crenshaw, one of our least favorite people in the America First movement. How are you doing tonight, Mike?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. It took me a little bit to get the lighting set up, and I'm in a little bit of a different space as opposed to my other videos. But yeah, I'm doing well, man. Just to start off, it was very great meeting you at CPAC. That's how we connected, and through Media Right News, and yeah, dude, it was great meeting you. Did you have a good time at CPAC?
Oh yeah, it was a blast. Better time at FPAC.
Yeah, there you go. That's like we're already off to a great start. You're already this guy's already had a better time at AFPAC than he did at CPAC, so that's a great start. So yeah, if people don't know Mike, and this is actually how I introduced you to Representative Gosar at the Republicans for National Renewal event. Mike is the person that we hope will primary Dan Crenshaw. As we both, and we'll obviously this is just scratching the surface, but as we both know, Dan Crenshaw is not America First; he's America Last, and we need to open up the floodgates a little bit for America First candidates like yourself. So I couldn't be happier that you're running, especially in my state. I know Dallas and Houston have a little bit of a rivalry, but I think in this one we can do some epic handshake. So I think we should be good. But yeah, just I mean, policy aside, because we're going to get into all that, but tell us about yourself. I actually don't know a ton about you. So what's Mike Billand's story?
Well, you know, I'm an average guy. Didn't attend Ivy League schools. Wasn't groomed to make a political run or have a career in politics. Actually, by trade, I'm an accountant. But I think I'm a relatively smart person. And you know, politics has been something I've always been passionate about deeply and for a long time. One of the issues I have is I feel too often the political class is composed of the elites, and it really isn't representative government. If you look at how things are supposed to be, we're supposed to elect someone of the people so that the government truly is of the people, by the people, and for the people. What if you're electing someone that spent their life growing up overseas and was attended Ivy League schools, groomed to take this position, basically encouraged to do it? Well, then, you know, not to denigrate anyone that's graduated from an Ivy League university or anything like that, but you know, that's not the average person. The average person is a blue collar person. The average person understands what it's like to struggle and what it's like to go without. You know, I've been there myself, and that's why I'm running. I'm running for, you know, the everyday American. So that way, particularly for District 2, so that we have someone in Congress that knows what it's like and isn't out of touch.
Heck yeah, that kind of messaging, you get that a lot from people like, you know, your Ted Cruz's and your Dan Crenshaws a lot, but you know, talking to someone who was actually an accountant and did participate in the private sector, it has a little bit more gravitas coming from someone like you, because I've met you. You know, you're not you know, doing the Dan Crenshaw waving your bloody shirt, you know, saying, well, I was in the Middle East, and that's no disrespect to our troops. It's just that Dan Crenshaw really uses that as a crutch, where anytime someone criticizes him, so he can lean on that. So it's refreshing to hear that, and from someone like you after meeting you. I do feel like it's authentic, and I can hear that Texan persona in your voice. It's very familiar to me from my family.
Well, you know, that should say that too. One of the things about politics, when a consultant will approach you trying to work with you, is they are either you have to have celebrity status in entertainment, you have to either have a bunch of money, or have military experience, and those are one of the three things, or those are three different main things they look for to be able to sell you.
And sorry to cut, but if you're a minority too in the GOP nowadays, They will push you, but that's a totally different, that's a different
Yeah,
topic.
that's another long conversation.
Yeah.
But but and I don't think that way. I think it needs to be someone that's of the people, and I think that's the way it should be.
Heck yeah.
I mean,
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, especially from that area you have, because where is District 2 exactly for people who aren't from here,
so it's actually a super interesting district. It's in Houston, but it's a lot of Houston. It starts up in Kingwood, comes down, heads west out towards Spring Branch, a little bit of 290, and then it snakes down into Midtown and follows 59 south down almost to the 610 loop. So it's a
Okay.
pretty oddly shaped district.
Okay.
We got a lot of different people in there too, which is really neat. We have healthy representations of Hispanics, Asians, and white folk as well. It's
Yeah.
a very diverse area.
Exactly. And I think that a lot of, well, it's probably a good time to kind of get into your general policies and kind of what you, kind of what your ideology is and the things you espouse. I can't fault. I know that the GOP kind of leans on the diversity thing a lot, and I know how to represent all Americans, but it's like, I mean, factually, if you are going to run and we're going to get America First candidates into large districts, factually, you are going to have to work with a lot of different racial groups and people of all kinds of backgrounds. So I think a lot of the policies that America First proposes and espouses, they will help all Americans objectively. It doesn't have to be pandering. It doesn't have to be, a bailout for Black people and not white people, or reparations or anything. But the policies that we're for, and I think you're America First, and we can sift through that. But I think he's got the pin. Okay, AF. Okay, see, it's all real. It's all real. This guy's tapped in. But the policies that we propose in America First will genuinely help all Americans. I think that's a good starting point. So kind of how would you, I think probably a good starting point for a lot of people who are maybe just normal Republicans or like boomer conservatives, they look at someone like Dan Crenshaw and they say, well, he served in Iraq. And he takes the slings and arrows from the media, so he's a good conservative. How would you differentiate yourself from someone like Dan? Like what key differences do you see between you and someone like Dan Crenshaw?
Well, see, Dan's a very status quo guy. He really only hits on what's safe, and he doesn't try and push the envelope. I feel as conservatives, especially in this day and age, what we need to do is be zealots in our ideology. We need to push it as far as we can, because it's what we sincerely believe is right, and what we sincerely believe will help all Americans. So why not fight tooth and nail for it? Why not push for it? The left is doing it with their crazy stuff. So why don't we? Why do we always try and compromise with them instead of drive our side further? And I think that's a big difference there. Is you need someone that's going to fight for these kind of things. Personally, my stance on immigration, I don't think Dan Crenshaw would take that up. My stance is we need a complete immigration moratorium. We need to evaluate our immigration policies, and we need to make it merit-based moving forward. I just don't think that's something Dan Crenshaw would necessarily endorse.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And the next issue will be even more interesting with gun control. I think that's an area where you're very strong. Immigration, yeah, I know. I see it behind you. Something that was interesting about Dan Crenshaw is I was doing a little bit of research before this video, and he'll toe the party line. He will, at least when Trump was in office, he'll toe the party line about, oh, well, we need to build the wall, and I'm against immigration. But are you really though, Dan? Like, I really don't feel like he is. If you want to go into that a little bit about how kind of do you think he toes the party line on immigration and just says what's safe? Or
Oh, for sure. That's exactly what he does. He's not going to say anything controversial. I think he's partly scared too because of our district. We have a high Hispanic population, but the thing is, if you actually go out there and talk to those people like I have, They're sick and tired of being pandered to. They're here, they're happy, and they work hard, and they don't want anyone coming here that's doing it illegally or that's going to require support from the
Yeah,
government, because
exactly.
they try their hardest not to be in that situation.
Yeah, and I think Texas is a very interesting case because a lot of people in the America First movement, maybe they're in like middle America or places that aren't really subjected to this, but in Texas, it really is our reality that like there are a lot of Hispanic people here and they are a large percentage of the voting base. So that's not to say don't offend them and don't say anything that'll, you know, stir the hornet's nest, but that is to say that you do have to account for that contingent. So, you know, while maybe you don't get on the campaign trail and say, you know, deport every illegal, because that may that's not exactly optical in a state that has the demographics of Texas. I think it is important, like you just said, to really advocate for that merit-based immigration at the very least. And I really don't see Dan doing that. So,
you know, interestingly so, we're at the highest level of immigration we've had since the 1890s. Well, the period between 1890 and the 19 teens. We're at the highest levels since then. But you know what we had then? When all these immigrants came through Ellis Island, they had to prove that they were able to financially support themselves so they would not become wards of the state. Now, welfare wasn't anywhere near as bloated as it is today back then. Now, continuing with that though, we don't even force them to show that they can provide for themselves now. We'll allow them in. We don't evaluate their asylum claims anymore or force them to remain in Mexico while we do so. We just let them in, give them a hearing date, and expect them to come back, which does not work.
Exactly. It's a totally broken system, and I don't really see someone like Dan Crenshaw having the fortitude to be able to do that. He's kind of bought and paid for by a lot of the powers that be here in Texas that we know about. So, but tying into that, I think kind of having that that worldview where you're not just playing defense, but you're starting to play offense. I want to hear about your Second Amendment stance, because I think that is very big in Texas. I think that Dan Crenshaw, and I think I have the quote here from Dan, where after the El Paso shootings, Dan Crenshaw advocated for red flag laws. He said, quote, "Clearly when I say red flag laws, you guys stop listening. You can't hear what we're suggesting because understandably you automatically assume that we are just agreeing with the left's version of that law. And we all know that the left's version would not be good. It would not protect due process. As it turns out, that isn't what we're talking about at all." So Dan has this funny way where when he gets criticized for anything, he just says, well, you're just not listening to me anymore. And you just think, and then he just does an ad hominem. Well, that's incredibly condescending what he just said. He said, well, when I say red flag laws, you're not listening. No, we're listening. And we want people like Billand in office who don't advocate for that. So kind of what's your general process mindset as far as Second Amendment goes, because that is a huge issue in Texas.
I don't think there's an issue with the Second Amendment whatsoever. I think it's great as written. I think the issue really lies with society. You know, if we look at all these mass shootings, that's a symptom of a sick society. It's not a symptom of the tool, as the weapon. Now, you can get into this if you look particularly at the war that the Democrats have waged on the nuclear family for the past 3 decades. You have this whole multiple generations of Americans being reared, particularly without fathers. If you look at some of the deadliest shootings we've had in this country, Sandy Hook, Las Vegas, and Parkland, they all have one thing in common with each other, and that's either an absent father or not a very good father. I think that's a large part to do with it. Because the Democrats' goal is to split the family up. They want people relying on the government. And what's the best way to do that is you get rid of the father, the provider, the protector, and you replace him with the government. And that's a huge issue there. As far as it goes with these red flag laws and trying to prevent crazy people from getting weapons, the thing is, all these shootings where a crazy person tried to get a weapon, it was a failure of the government. The government didn't catch it. Like the Parkland kid, I forget his name, but he
Nicholas
was,
Cruz.
yes, he was regularly reported. He posted on social media he wanted to be the next school shooter. But did Big Tech take that down?
No.
Did they do anything about that? No.
Well, what's funny about people like Dan Crenshaw is that it's so dishonest, because what'll end up happening if the laws that Dan Crenshaw advocates for, like red flag laws, are instituted, they're not going to prevent the next Nicholas Cruz from doing Parkland. It'll be Nick Fuentes. It'll be anyone that we like. They're going to use those laws, especially under a leftist administration like Biden. They're going to use those things against us. Now, are we for some crazy guy who's on Facebook like Nicholas Cruz saying, oh, I want to be the next mass school shooter? Are we for him getting his guns, taken away? Absolutely. But the thing is that's not what's going to happen. We're already seeing that with big tech. They're not, like you said, that's a good point. Did Facebook take down his Facebook post when he said he wanted to do that? No, they left them up, and we saw what happened. And somehow it gets blamed on the right that we want self-defense or something like that. So it's incredibly dishonest. And I think that people like Crenshaw kind of play into that when they either they're stupid or they're evil. You know what I mean? It's like either you don't know what's going to happen with these red flag laws, or you do and you're just a liar and you hate the people you represent.
Well, I don't think he's stupid.
I think you're probably right there, to be honest with you. I think he knows good and well what he's doing. He knows good and well what he's doing with these issues. And it may not be that he dislikes guns or something like that, but it's definitely a Machiavellian power move where he wants the left and the right alike to like him. Wait, well, you can go for it.
Oh no, I was going to say precisely. I mean, if you look at the interview he did in response to the article that the Daily Beast, I believe it's the Daily Beast, put out on today, that was a relatively friendly interview for a hostile topic.
That is so funny you say that. It's so true. I was thinking that too. It's funny. A man by his enemies. That's what I've learned the last probably 2 or 3 years since I've started to get involved in like online world. You start to notice that like, oh, the Daily Beast and Politico are writing articles about how Dan Crenshaw might be the future of the Republican Party. That's probably a sign that I don't trust him. So that leads us to interviews like this and you running in District 2. I think all Republicans and all Republican voters should be wary of someone who is being pushed like that. Ted Cruz is honestly a similar example, not quite the same, but it's similar. When they're letting Dan Crenshaw onto SNL to hash it out with Pete Davidson because he was rude to him or something, that is not someone that I want in office, because clearly he can come to the table and chat with you guys. So, the minute you go on SNL is when I'll not be supporting. So yeah, we touched on immigration, we touched on gun control. I think you started to talk about it, social issues.
Yeah.
Kind of where do you stand socially on kind of you started with the family. Maybe a good jumping off point would be, I know in Dallas we had an issue here. His name was James Younger in Coppell outside of Dallas.
Yes.
Forced to go through transgender surgery at the age of 8. He didn't really know what he wanted to do. His mom had clearly brainwashed him. I'm not talking about that case specifically, but that's kind of what I'm talking about, kind of the social issues. Where do you find yourself on those issues? Because I know people like Dan are very conservatarian and they're like, well, just it doesn't hurt me, that I don't care. But what's your...
No, that hurts everyone there. That is child abuse, is what that is.
There we go.
Particularly in the case of James, I don't feel that children should be making that decision. I do recognize that transgenderism is a medical condition. Where exactly those roots lie, I don't know. I'm not a medical professional, but I don't think a child one understands that, or two, in no means should be ever be put through that, and definitely not have that be something that's necessarily celebrated at all. Because it contributes to dysfunction. And actually, too, if you look at a majority of these children that were forced or coerced to undergo these things, later in life, they absolutely regret them. And it turns
Over
out that
40% suicide rate among transgender surgeries later in life.
exactly. And now these surgeries aren't necessarily a new thing. With hermaphrodites, for example, uh, back several decades ago, doctors would try and best determine what true sex the baby was and surgically correct to make that right. And sometimes they got it wrong, and but that's a very, 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 very rare case.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing to me, is that it's not even so much the issue itself, even though it is an issue, transgenderism and how we approach it. It's more that we're trying to conform society around an issue that affects less than half a percentage of the
Oh
population.
yeah, yeah. And see, that's the thing that I really have a hard time with is if you're a grown adult and you're of the age of consent and you're paying for that yourself, and no taxpayer money is going towards that, that is 100% on you. But by no means are you to force your ideology on anyone else, because, like you said, it affects such a small population of
Mhm.
people that we shouldn't have to change our lives to adjust to that.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And I think it'll be important to kind of have like a push against that ideology, or not a push against, yeah, a push against the ideology, but especially a push against it being done to kids that aren't old enough to decide that or smart enough to know. You know what I mean?
I'm 110% against that whatsoever when it comes to children. They're not mature enough that they, even if you take the case of James, he's just now realizing the differences between boys and girls. So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no way he can make a decision as to what his sex is. They like to
Yeah.
use that term gender. Gender is not a scientific term. Sex is either a male or a female.
That's probably a good distinction to draw. I like that. All right. So we're green check box on the social issues, I think. There was we could probably touch on this. Houston is probably an interesting area to touch on this on. Are there any economic issues where you and Dan might disagree on, kind of, because I know Houston is a very, very dependent on the oil market. It's very dependent on the health sector as well. I didn't know kind of I didn't have time to look up you and Dan's economic standpoints, but where do you stand economically as far as kind of the future for Texas?
Well, economically speaking, the oil and gas industry is vital to Houston, and one of the attacks that's often made against the oil and gas industry is the effect on climate. But the truth of the matter is these companies have been progressively getting cleaner with their production methods, been getting safer. It's in their best interest to be, because if they're not, they open themselves up to suits, federal fines, and a whole myriad of other punitive actions against them. So it's in their best interest to be as environmentally sound as they possibly can. Because also, too, it affects their workforce. These people live here. So if they're polluting the environment, they're hurting their workers, they're hurting their staff, and no company wants to do that. Houston actually really depends on the oil and gas industry, particularly the medical one that you had cited. We have some of the leading hospitals in the nation here. We have MD Anderson Cancer Center. We have Texas Children's Hospital here.
You guys' medical center puts Dallas's to shame. You guys' medical center legitimately looks like a downtown skyline. It's insane. I love it.
Yeah,
But sorry, I didn't mean to cut. But I
It's
love
all
it.
right. It's all right. Yeah, no, it's a good place to get sick.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's one of the things. We need to do as much as we can to protect the economy here. And so I think where Dana and I might differ is just in terms of gatekeeper strategy. As to, I want a more level playing field because that enables innovation, allows allows new techniques, new technologies, and everything else to be able to take off, better ways of doing things, more cost-effective ways. But if you're passing legislation that really just benefits donors and things like that, not saying that Dan does, but I think that's where a point where we would probably differ on that.
Okay. Yeah, I think you have more of a people. As far as economics go, what it seems like to me with you is that you have more of a care for the citizens and the Texans, rather than big business or kind of just some abstract concept of like tax cuts or, Ben Shapiro, I'm pro free market. It's like, yeah, we've been through that. We've been through the Reagan years. And I think, I think it's important to kind of have that people first mentality. And I think that's something that you have.
Oh, so I'm glad you mentioned the Reagan era thing, because a lot of people like to say trickle down didn't work. And it didn't work because we started regulating labor too heavily. So you let all the cash flow to the top of the businesses, and then you regulate labor to such a degree that it disincentivizes them from hiring American or paying these larger salaries because there's more overhead costs associated with all the extra HR functions you have to perform, all these different health insurances and things you're forced to provide. And what we saw under President Trump actually was the first time we saw real wage growth since the 70s. Because unemployment was so low, companies had to start competing, and they had to start trying to offer better incentives and better pay to be able to attract and retain talent. And
Right.
that's the America I want to see again.
Everything you just said, I think, is 100% true. And I think you had a good point earlier, and we both agree on this about immigration. You partner everything you just said about Reagan era politics, about overregulation of labor, but you also add on to that the Amnesty Bill of 86, and you also add on the Hart-Celler Act of 1965. So basically what you've had is an endless spigot overflowing into every state in America that's undercutting wages at every level, and we're going to overregulate the labor of the founding stock here, I guess, because the illegal immigrants working on the field are not going to be subject to the same regulations that a Fortune 500 company is that has to go through E-Verify or the I-9 process. So it's really a double-edged sword. So as long as a candidate is stringently I'm anti-immigration. I'm not trying to put that onto you, but is hardcore, has a hard stance on immigration, then I'm good, and that kind of solves itself economically.
Oh, we need to shut it down.
Yeah. The thing that has to enter politicians' lexicon is moratorium. That doesn't mean never another immigrant ever again. That doesn't mean, never a person from Germany here ever again, or China. No, that just means a moratorium. We had a moratorium leading up to 65. And I think the spigot has been on a little bit too long. So
it has. And, I actually had a very good conversation with a Democrat, believe it or not, last evening. We had
very rare. Those are very rare conversations.
I know. She's really great. She's a very nice woman. But we were talking about it, and I was like, all right, well, how do you feel about immigration? And she's like, well, because both our families came here in like 1910-ish. And I was like, oh, well, when your family came here and when mine came here, we had to prove that we could sustain ourselves, or else we had to get back on the boat. And she was like, well, but, these people in Central America and Mexico just have it so hard that we need to let them in here because they're literally getting hunted by the cartel and this and that. And I was like, well, look, you know, the world is a very, very bad place. We are a very nice place.
That's what I was going to say, was that like the world is not generally like this easy-go-lucky place.
Oh, it's terrible. A lot of it is.
Well, by her standard, where do you draw the line? You know?
And what the root of the conversation we were able to get to is that she's concerned about compassion. She wants us to be the most compassionate country. And what I actually got her to agree with me on this. I'm like, okay, well, what if that's not what everyone wants? What if not everyone wants to be compassionate? You can't force compassion. It's a choice. It has to be of your heart, of your free will to be compassionate. Otherwise, it's not. And that's one thing we were talking about is like, okay, well, you just want to be compassionate with this, but how about, and this is just what I proposed to her, but she went with it, is we shut down the border and we go strictly back to merit-based immigration, where you have to prove that you can fend for yourself. You either have a job lined up here or you're coming here with significant assets to where you don't have to worry. She's like, yeah, but what about all these people, this and that? I'm like, well, how about, private charity? And she's like, well, yeah, they do that with a bunch of veteran programs and this and that. I'm like, okay, so if you want to be on the line for these people, if you want to sign for them, that you will personally, financially guarantee their success here for the next 3 years, then you're more than welcome to it.
Right.
But otherwise, I'm sorry, we can't even take care of our own. We have children without health care. We have thousands of veterans on the street, and it makes no sense to let them.
And that's something that as a veteran, Dan Crenshaw should care about ostensibly. Like that should be right up his wheelhouse. That's not to say that he hasn't done work for veterans, but for someone who is as mealy-mouthed on immigration as he is, he has to be looking out for the impacts of the veterans, which is something that you're doing more so than he is, and you weren't even in the service. And it's like, where are your priorities, Dan? It's interesting. So yeah, I think that's a good point. You got economics, we've got immigration, we've got gun control, we've got social issues. I guess kind of what are your other policy? I guess in general, what are your policy issues that you're passionate about? What else is there?
Healthcare for sure.
Okay.
So one of my previous jobs, I was a financial controller, basically head of all the accounting, do all the financial reporting for the company, oversee HR benefits and everything to do with that. And one of the things I noticed, and this is in small town East Texas.
I'm familiar with it.
We had to provide health insurance, obviously, and so we did that through Blue Cross Blue Shield. And one of the things was if you had a family, your premium, rather, I think the family rate, if I'm remembering right, was like $800 a paycheck.
Jeez.
Which is about what a lot of people make
in a paycheck. And if you have a good job, that might be a half to a third. If you have a really good job, that might be half of your check.
Oh, yes, exactly. I mean, like, luckily it's pre-tax, but the thing is, that's just insane. And one of the things that drove that inefficiency was the Affordable Care Act and the way that health insurance companies operate. I had a very good conversation with Congressman Gosar at the Republicans for National Renewal event.
Yeah, that's where we linked up. That's good. Nice. Very good.
And so at the end of the event, we were speaking, and he had some very good ideas that I think would be great, is that we nationalize it, because right now you have states doing it. Now I've worked for another company that was based out of Atlanta, and so they used an Atlanta-based health insurance company that had a branch in Texas, but they have to negotiate contracts with the different Texas hospitals, Texas doctors, and all that kind of thing. But they may not be incentivized to do that so well in Texas. They may operate more exclusively in Georgia. So they have way better deals in Georgia, and you're going to get better care in Georgia. But if you actually nationalize this, you do two things. One, you allow for better contracts, better negotiation, and two, you lower overhead on behalf of the insurance companies. So what these companies are having to do is a bunch of actuarial studies to determine different risks for different areas and determine a rate that they can charge someone based on their, age and sex and whatnot. Now, if you nationalize this, the data pool drastically increases, the data gets better, and they don't have to do all these studies in these different localities, and they can just do it on a national level, and that lowers that overhead. So right there's less cost for providing the insurance, and then also too, I support price transparency. So I don't know if you've know this or not, but when you go into your if you're a primary care physician, say you own your own practice, and you want to work with these insurance companies. Well, when you work with them, these insurance companies will give you a lot of rates that they pay up front. They'll be like, okay, so physical, normal, every once a year physical, will pay you $75, and then you can collect a $25 copay from the patient and net $100, right? But what they don't do is things for like special blood tests or something. They're like, oh, well, we'll pay you market rate. So the doctor's going in blind. So say you get a special blood test done, and let's say to make a good margin on that, the doctor only needs to charge $250, but he doesn't know what he's going to make. So he aims high, and let's say he charges the insurance company $500.
Okay.
The insurance company denies that, says we'll cover $250. Well, you know where that other $250 goes?
Where?
To the patient. Insurance company still expects it to be paid.
Okay. Oh, so they pick up the cost of that overcharge or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
That's in some cases. So with that though, if we forced insurance companies to be 100% price transparent, that gives the doctor more information, allows them to make better decisions for their patient's care.
Okay.
And it's doctors, particularly primary care ones, know their patients better, and they know what they can afford, and they know what may be the best choice of action for them. And I support giving them as much information as they can possibly have.
Nice. Okay. I think that's an area that I didn't expect to touch on this one, because I admittedly I'm not super informed on the healthcare issue. I know the basics of it, but that's not something that is my wheelhouse. I mostly operate in like race and social issues and immigration, but I think that's interesting. And I think an important word you said there that you and Gosar agreed on was nationalize. Nationalize. There is nothing wrong with that word. The Republicans, not Republicans, but the GOP Connie establishment swamp hates the term nationalize. Anything nationalized means, oh, that's socialism and we can't do that. And it's like, no, there are certain things that need to be nationalized. And I think you and Gosar hit the nail on the head, and he's a great guy. So.
Oh yeah, he's kind beyond measure. He's a great man.
I had a great time meeting him. And I think his speech was incredible. Were you actually at AFPAC in the room?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think we connected at actual AFPAC. We more went to the R&R events, but.
Well, that was smaller.
yeah, exactly. Infinitely smaller. But yeah, I think that's good. I think you highlighted really well the differences between you and someone like Dan. I don't know.
Dan and I are actually alike in one way. We both have a significant tether to healthcare. Dan's mother passed away when he was 10 from cancer, and my mother passed away when I was 11 from chronic illness. She had fibromyalgia, Lyme's disease, lupus, and one kidney to function all that on. And so I grew up watching her mainly be bedridden, and we were lucky enough that my dad had good health insurance and my mother was always taken care of. But I tweeted about this a few weeks ago on the anniversary of her death. Is my situation wasn't unique, losing a parent at that age, but what is unique is having that good coverage, and there's so many American families that don't have access to it or can't afford it.
So I think this is probably where you could subvert Dan a little bit. Is like, I know the Republican response to people not having access to good coverage tends to be something like, oh, we'll just get a better job, work harder, work more hours. And I guess what would Mike Billand's response be if you were at a town hall next to Dan Crenshaw and a Walmart worker who is working shifts overnight, who's part-time and doesn't have access to full-time benefits, asks you like, hey, what do I do about XYZ chronic illness? Because we know what the GOP response is. It's like, we'll just go get a second job or go get a third job or make more money. Do you see any difference there, or like kind of what's your,
Well,
you know what, do you see the question?
oh yes.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's not necessarily an issue as that the underlying care itself is so prohibitively expensive. It's an issue of what we allow the insurance companies to get away with. Particularly if you look at the CARES Act. I don't know if you've ever gone for a COVID test.
I refuse because there's too many false positives and I don't want to be on record of having COVID, so I just never take a test.
I had to take one to go back to work.
Ah.
I don't like working from home.
I'll be there. I will be there at some point. I have a feeling my job is going to pull that. I don't even want to take the test because there's so many false positives. But
I was worried about that too. It's unpleasant. But the thing is, though, if you're going in there and you say, I don't have insurance, I'm self-pay, they charge you like $125 or $175. And they make a margin on that. They make a good margin. That's what they need is $125 or $175. And they're making a good margin. Now, if you have health insurance, it's free to you, technically.
Mm-hmm.
So let's examine that a little bit. Well, the CARES Act provides for health insurance companies have to let you get a test and not charge you anything out of pocket if you meet certain criteria, which is pretty wide open. So been in contact with someone, have any of the symptoms, yada, yada, you can go get a test and your health insurance company will pay for it. Now, what you don't see is that these companies that are administering the tests aren't billing your insurance company $175 or $125. They're billing them $2,200.
Right. And who's picking up that cost?
Well, we are.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. Right.
And that's just insane. So who negotiated that to let these these companies make off with that ridiculous kind of profit? Say they're probably making 20-30% on the 175, and now they're getting $2,200. That's insane. And then we see that.
That's immoral.
It is 100%, and we see that issue every day with just the health insurance racket. And and a lot of it is driven by legislative inefficiency and having to encompass all these different needs, like we saw under the ACA, that these plans had to make all these coverages available to be considered major health insurance or major medical insurance. And we also saw the fine with that, which thank God we were able to get repealed. But aside from that, though, it's basically just a game of the health insurance companies running a racket for the most part, because those doctors aren't making a bunch.
Exactly. And I mean, that kind of ties into what we were talking about with people like Dan Crenshaw, and you could probably tie it in with people like Ben Shapiro and stuff like that, where it's all about the free market and it's all about not being pro-regulation, and it's all about what I guess letting medical companies, have their way with their patients, and then, making sure that, in order to afford good care, you're working at Wendy's, McDonald's, and Burger King all in the same day. It's like, we're not in a position to do that. And you guys don't even support like a minimum wage increase not for part-time workers, but for full-time workers. It's like, there's clearly a disconnect between the current GOP and the people that they claim to support. So that's why I was kind of drawn to your campaign as far as kind of that grassroots America First type feel to it. And yeah, I really appreciated that you reached out, that we connected at CPAC. The only other thing I don't think we touched on was foreign intervention. I think that's something that Dan Crenshaw hangs his hat on. He's total war hawk. He's a modern day John McCain. Where do you stand on foreign intervention as a whole? Where would you?
So I don't think we need to be involved anywhere for the most part. Particularly Europe really shouldn't be there.
That's so true. That I'm sorry to cut you off, but like
Okay.
the European one is like particularly offensive because like there is clearly nothing going on in Berlin that requires us to have a military base there.
Well, actually, Berlin provides us with some decent slaps to the face. So they, as we know, they hadn't been towing their agreement in terms of NATO funding, which isn't a dollar amount; it's a percent of GDP. They just wouldn't pay it, wouldn't pay their fair share. So, you know,
Because they knew we'd cover it.
exactly. And we maintained over 600 bases on foreign soil, which is ridiculous.
That's insane.
Isn't it? Well, that's as of 2015. I'm not sure what the current number is, but it was over 600 back then. But anyway, what we're seeing with Germany particularly is the whole purpose of NATO is to defend them against Russia, right? Prevent a Russian invasion, the old Cold War relic hanging around. But then they're going to go ahead and buy gas from Russia.
Yeah, the Gazprom scandal. Exactly.
After they've seen Russia invade a sovereign nation over a gas bill.
That is, it doesn't make any sense. And
it's a slap in the face to Americans, frankly.
it really is. It really is, because who's the ones at the end of the day that are paying for that? It's us. It's net tax contributors. It's people like you and I. Yeah, I mean, it's particularly offensive from the GOP people like Crenshaw. I mean, there's no I don't know how far I want to get into it, but he would call any criticism of Middle Eastern intervention anti-Semitism or something like that because he learned that from Shapiro or something.
Well, he does hit pretty hard on the anti-hands-off attitude towards the Middle East. I believe, paraphrasing him, not direct quote, one of the statements he had made was something to the effect of, if we were in Afghanistan in 2001, there wouldn't have been a 9/11. Well, that's a very simplistic way of looking at it.
So,
but the fact of the matter is, we knew about it beforehand. The FBI knew about it and the CIA knew about it, but they wouldn't talk to each other and they weren't allowed to talk to each other at the time. It was a failure of government. We knew this was happening. These people had been reported. You know, when they're trying to learn how to fly, and these flight instructors are like, you know, obviously feeling something's wrong and reporting it to the appropriate authorities, and they didn't do what they should have on that. It's not because we weren't there. That's
yeah, exactly.
Simplistic.
Well, I guess by that logic, we should just be everywhere, just, you know, as an insurance policy that nothing bad will ever happen, because if we were everywhere, then nothing bad will happen.
Well, that's the strategy right now. We've got over 12 super carriers, 6 sovereign acres of floating America.
It's such a waste of money when you look around and look at this. And that's why I like Trump so much. And I'm not trying to reminisce too much here, but that's why I like Trump so much, because he was talking about the real problems. He was talking about the fact that our airports are third world standard. There's potholes in very nice cities. You know, you drive up and down the main roads of any top 10 most populous city in America. You're going to hit potholes. It's disgusting. There's crime. Yeah, I know. And Dallas has been under construction for the last 30 years on I-35. So don't get me started. I know about the roads. But you go to any major city and it's pathetic. But for some reason, we think that teaching Afghani kids about BLM and LGBTQIA plus ideology is somehow like that's where the smart money is. It's like I can't do it.
So everyone has their place in this world, and a lot of those people are very happy with the place they have, you know, because they don't know any better.
Right.
Really, we should be hands off there. If you look at the whole Middle East, the reason we see a lot of the conflict we do now is the post World War I. So after
Treaty of Versailles.
Yep, after the Ottoman Empire fell, just arbitrarily drew lines and didn't take into account any kind of cultural issues or anything like that. And we just developed an area that is insanely unstable due to that reason. And there's no reason for us to be there. There's no reason for us to be losing American lives overseas. We got Bin Laden. We took him out. Took a little while, but we got him. And you know, there's really no reason to be there at all. Now,
Oh no, go. You're good.
so with that, I do believe it's important to counter the Chinese threat, and we do need to have a strong military, both cyber and conventional, to counter that. But that does not mean we need to occupy all these corners of the world.
Correct. There are legitimate geopolitical threats out there. So like you have there's so many layers to it. You have the normal conservative response to China, like the Steve Bannon response, or like the Raheem Kassam response is like, China is our greatest threat in the world, and we need to be have a strong stance against them. And this was kind of the Trump mentality. It's like the normie-con response. It's like, oh, China's the biggest threat out there. That's the only one. And Russia's fine, but China is the one. And then there's kind of the reactionary right, a step above that says, actually, China isn't that big of a threat. And, they don't censor our dissidents like our own American government is doing. So we actually need to support them. And China's actually kind of base. But really, when you go a step above that third level, it's like, frankly, China is definitely a threat to America. Like they're economically a threat. At some point, they'll become a military threat to us. Of course, we need to have a stance, maybe not totally confrontational against them, but we are definitely opposing forces in the world. So I think that's kind of where you're at, is like, okay, maybe not all of my geopolitical mental energy is spent talking about Beijing or Xi Jinping or what he's doing. I largely don't really care what's going on in China, but I definitely want to keep an eye on them and make sure the shipping lanes in the South Pacific Sea go well, you know.
I've been to China. I was there in the summer of 2019.
Oh shit, you got me beat. I've never been to China.
And well, I actually wore my Trump hat in Beijing, in Tiananmen Square.
Really?
Yes.
You wore a Trump hat in Tiananmen
I
Square?
wore a Trump hat. It wasn't a red one. It was I guess not as loud of a Trump hat, but it's still Trump 2020 on it.
Very epic, very epic. Okay.
But what I noticed over there is that the Chinese, they're a lot like us in a lot of ways. One thing that they do better than what we do now is they all have immense pride in their country. And that's why they're able to do what they do. That's why they tolerate all this communist crap, is because they believe China is the best thing to ever grace the planet. And frankly, that's what keeps them together, because they're ruthless capitalists at heart. They will make a deal and they'll try and cheat you any which way they can.
It's a lot like Indians. It's a lot like India.
I've never been, but
no, I kind of just mean like with that bartering mentality. Like, you know, it's all about the best price you can get.
Anything.
The Indians do that a lot.
Oh yeah, and so the Chinese, that patriotism really binds them together, and that's something that we're lacking, and that's something that they're actually probably actively influencing, is this divide that we see. You know, we talk about Russia, but I think what we really need to think about is what are the communists trying to do to influence our culture and try to drive us further apart.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I'm not China's biggest fan, but I will say that they have a national unity that I wish we could mimic, and that, well, not even mimic. We had it up until
we did
up until a certain point. We certainly don't have that anymore. And I'll just put it this way: China doesn't have BLM marching in the streets. China doesn't have Uyghur Lives Matter marching in the streets and being spray painted on every building in Beijing and Shanghai. No, they don't have that. And even if they did, they wouldn't tolerate it. So, frankly, for that matter, neither does Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia doesn't have that. So there is something to be said for having a government that has kind of a heavy hand, if I put it that way. So, yeah, man, I think I don't know what else to talk to you about. This is my first time talking to a congressional candidate. I feel honored. I don't know what else to talk to you about, but floor is yours, man. If there's anything you want to talk about, or if there's nothing else, that's fine too.
I'd kind of like to hit back on the social issues thing.
Sure.
I heard a very interesting sermon this past Sunday. Sermon was about the Jews wandering the desert. So, at that point, they're given the 10 Commandments. And now, the 10 Commandments are actually a gift from God. It's not follow these rules or else. It's a gift. And what it does is it's really for how to live amongst other people. Because this is the first time these people have been free. They were slaves in Egypt, and now they're free. But they're wandering the desert together. And so a lot of these deal with, interpersonal stuff.
This is after they exited Egypt.
Exactly.
Okay.
So wandering the desert, and the 10 Commandments really just lay down a good base for society. And I think that's something we need to return to in this country. Having a good base for society and not just having this attitude of laissez-faire towards social issues, which could prove to be insanely detrimental to the health of the country. And, it's not necessarily that we need to force, Christianity on everyone, because these principles resonate across all religions. But not even just that, it's just good, sound morals. It's not anything that is really specifically religious. It's just don't kill anyone, don't help others. And
what I've always told people is that libertarianism, and that's more what you're talking about, is like libertarianism, that laissez-faire, just as long as I'm not hurt by it, then I don't care. Do what you want to do, smoke your pot, and yeah, we know what I mean there as far as social issues. Do whatever you want to do. It doesn't hurt me. All of that ideology is a dereliction of moral duty. We all have a duty in society to be the best person we can be, inspire the younger generation. Even if you don't have kids, I don't have kids. I'm not married. But I do have young cousins. I have a lot of young cousins that I try to make sure that at the very least, even though I'm not perfect, I try to be the best person I can be. If I were to just sit back one day and say, oh, well, I'm just going to start doing crack because that doesn't hurt them, it's like, no, that does hurt them because they're not getting the best me that they can see. So libertarianism, I used to be a libertarian, and I think a lot of us started there, but libertarianism slowly morphed from like, oh, well, it's not a problem, to like, that's actually immoral, because I'm starting to see more and more people kind of take that on. So it's an easy exit off the highway of morality, and it's a dereliction of your moral duty to just write it off and say, oh, well, I'll just smoke my crack and the kids don't care. It doesn't hurt them. It's like, no, it does. And it hurts society.
It does. It does. You're absolutely right. It's detrimental to society as a whole. We need to have a strong society so we rear stronger future generations. I mean, if you look at a lot of our cohorts, some of them can't change a tire. Some of them don't know how to schedule their own doctor's appointment. And not to say we didn't have our own challenges growing up and matriculating under one of the worst recessions we've ever seen, but that should make us stronger. That shouldn't make us weaker. And I think a lot of the reason that we've ended up in this situation is we have lower expectations. I mean, you can see that if you go out to eat or if you go to like Walmart or anything like that, because we don't expect more of each other and we don't expect these high performance standards of each other anymore, and we're just kind of like, oh well, it got done, kind of a thing.
That's so true.
We start seeing society go down, and that's not what we want. I mean, like the other night I was at Walmart trying to get razors, and they had they lock up the $3 razors for some reason.
Of course they do.
And I waited around 20 minutes for someone to bring a key. No one showed up, and I just left. And that's because largely we're not. So it started with the manager. The manager it doesn't have a lot expected of them, and they don't expect a lot of their employees, and it just rolls. We need to all expect a lot of each other and push each other, and that's how we bring back American excellence, and that's how we fix the country.
I think you actually hit the nail on the head there about, I think retail and fast food experiences are quickly becoming the best way to gauge whether or not your area is like a functioning area or city or not. Because increasingly what I'm seeing is I can tell whether or not an area is affluent or not based on like the service I get at the Home Depot or the 7-Eleven. You can see it. You just hit the nail on the head. I was at Chick-fil-A today. This is the Chick-fil-A I've gone to my entire life, and I'm just going to tangent here. This is the Chick-fil-A I've gone to my entire life. I'm in Dallas, Texas. Gone there my entire life, and I've noticed over the past probably 6 months, less and less people say my pleasure when I say thank you. And then I started to look at who the people were that weren't saying my pleasure. And then dots started to click. And then it was like, oh, wait, let's look up the demographics of the city I'm living in. Oh, it's also the second most diverse zip code behind Brooklyn, New York in the nation.
Wow.
It is what it is. 75062 or 75039 are one of those two. They are one of the, it's the second most diverse zip code behind Brooklyn.
Wow. I didn't know we had that in up and down.
In Texas, we have that. There's no demographic group that has primacy here. Blacks, whites, Hispanics, and like blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians, and Indians all account for 20 to 23% of the population. So it's just it's a melting pot. And the Chick-fil-A I grew up going to, it was like, it used to be just, now it's like, it's disoriented. People don't say my pleasure. They're on their phones while I'm pulling up. It's crazy, man. So like when you look at your retail experience, I think you're right. I mean, you know, I don't want to get you into any trouble talking about demographics too much, but it's true. Well, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I don't know, man.
It's expectations too.
It's expectations. I would code it with that. It's expectations. Who has the highest expectations? A Karen. The meme of the Karen.
She definitely does.
Karen has the highest expectations. She's going to demand that you are prompt with your service. When you spend 2 years saying that Karen is a racist and Karen is disgusting and Karen is annoying, well, you're going to kick the Karens out of that restaurant or that establishment, and then no one else is going to care. So I think that's kind of what we're going through right now is we need more Karens. I stan Karen.
It is an important market factor there to influence, better service. I mean, maybe Karen should go about it in a better way, but it's definitely, we got to have these expectations, and that's key. Definitely key to things. I mean, if you look at anyone that matriculates out of college now and gets into the working world, I've seen them a lot throughout my career. They get in to the accounting department and they just know what they learned in the university, and they've been coddled by the university and coddled by professors, and they don't have any sense of urgency, and it just kind of really sets them up for failure. And one of my neighbors, he's a university professor here in Houston, and we were talking about that, and he said he found a bunch of old files from the 60s, and he was reading them, and he's like, yeah, so some of those things that those undergrads are doing with like PhD level today of depth.
That is insane how so I'm not even going to lie. I didn't go to college. I didn't graduate. I have a career with my high school diploma. So but I understand the concerns about the university. I just can't totally grasp them because I wasn't there, and I don't fully understand that. I did what I had to do. So
if I could do it again, I don't think I would go to university.
That's not a conversation to have with me because I can't offer any. I'll just be honest. I can't offer any great, advice there. But yeah, man. So a couple other questions. I probably have two more questions, and then you can go with whatever else you want for this video. I think it went very well. One, do you consider yourself America first?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay, so then we're good there. I think we could probably contrast that with someone like Dan Crenshaw, where if we asked him if he considered himself America first, he would say yes, but we could offer counter examples of him not being America first.
And a lot of people don't understand what it truly means to be America first, too. They think it's just the foreign policy piece of, oh, well, we're going to do what's best for America. Well, you actually got to look at things and really do what's best for America. And then, it means all this foreign aid, our military spending, our presence overseas, all the stuff we talked about.
Being America first is about being pro-American people.
Exactly.
And then you have to ask yourself, who are the American people? It's not someone who got here from Guatemala yesterday. It's probably a founding European stock with a small contingent of a slave class that has full equal rights to that European founding stock now. It's something like that. I don't know. I mean, you just have to ask yourself, if anyone can be American, then what does it mean to be American?
That's an interesting point, and I feel particularly, my family, we immigrated here after World War I.
Sure. The white side of my family is Czech and German, so.
Oh, cool.
So So I understand there's a whole thing because my family came here in during the white side of my family came here during the Ellis Island years.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, we're from Alsace-Lorraine. It's France and Germany, depending on the year.
Okay. Okay, depending on the year, exactly.
Yeah. But anyway, when my family came here, we rapidly assimilated and wanted to be American and wanted to adopt the American culture. And that's what we're missing today. We don't emphasize the American culture anymore. We celebrate all these other cultures. And, it's right to acknowledge them and stuff like that. And my family does it too. We have some, my mother's Polish. We have some Polish traditions and stuff like that we'll keep up with, and foods that we eat. But we're unequivocally Americans,
Exactly.
uncompromisingly, and we partake in that culture. And that's something we need to promote. You're not a Guatemalan American, you're an American, and you got to think that way. You got to think that, this is what I am. These are my people. These are going to be my morals, because it is a culture, and all cultures have those things. They have their underlying moral code. They have their social structure and their hierarchies and everything like that. And that's what we need to push, is the American culture.
Yeah.
We really haven't been doing a good job of that.
Not at all. Because like I said, like Nick Fuentes has said, if being American, if being American can be embodied by anyone, then it doesn't mean anything. You have to care about the ideals. A good example probably is someone like Clarence Thomas or Thomas Sowell, if you think about it. Clarence Thomas is a great example. He's an American, not because he's a white European, blue-eyed, blonde-haired Swede who immigrated here in the 1400s. No, he's American because he's the last defender of the Constitution on the Supreme Court. Like that's why he's an American. So until we have an immigrant class that is as vociferously American as him, then voting Democrat does not make you an American, in my opinion, because
definitely not.
You know what I mean? Like stepping your toe onto the soil across the southern border is not an American made. So
you have to
embody the ideal of America.
And give for it and help your fellow Americans too. That's the other thing is, we gotta bring back this national culture and national pride that we had in the middle of the 20th century, where everyone was prideful to be American and helped each other out. And
you could probably make that. This is a total side point, but you could probably make that argument September 12th, 2001, where people were like proud to be American and like, remember like
Yeah.
I don't know how old you are, but remember like there were Toby Keith songs like I'm proud to be.
I love me some Toby.
He was awesome. And I remember like there was this whole genre of music that was like all about patriotism. And it was like,
Yes.
and we'll kick their ass and like we're about to go bomb them. Like that was, I mean, neocon stuff aside, that was kind of cool. Like that was fun Americana. And we will never have that again. We will literally never have that gusto behind the American ideology of like, we're going to go beat the shit out of you. You wronged us and we're going to go bomb you and hurt you now. Like that was the one cool thing after 9/11 was like that unity. But around 2008, racial politics was injected in it because of Obama and Trayvon Martin and all that stuff. So we'll never have that again. But that was a fun time. I think you're old enough to remember it, but I am too.
Oh yes, I remember it dearly.
That's crazy to me. That feels like yesterday, but that was 20 years ago, man.
That
was 20 years ago.
That's wild. Wow. Hey, you know, there's a whole voting generation that wasn't even alive for 9/11. That's just scary. I mean, not scary, I guess.
It's not scary. It's I don't even know.
It's different. I mean, I'm sure people after Pearl Harbor felt the same way.
True.
Probably why we had Vietnam. But you know,
that's a lot to think. That's too much to unpack in this video.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give a good introduction of you, man. And I think we touched on all the issues. I think this video is it's over an hour. I know we've been talking. I think we're at like an hour and 15 or something. So
wow.
It felt like 30 minutes. So I think that's the sign of a good video. Where can people find you? Where can people donate?
So if you go to www.billand4tx.com, also billandfortexas.com. I don't want to bring you to the site.
I'm going to put all this in the description below anyway. Awesome. So I just wanted to get this on video.
Yeah, I'll send you an email with all that stuff too. But if you go there, there's a bio about me. There's a few blurbs on my issues or larger issues that I feel are important. And also too, at the bottom of the page is a link to donate section for comments. I love reading those. I do read every single one of them and often reply. I love to hear what people think the government should be doing and what they experience in their part of the country. And also too, if anyone wants to volunteer, there's a page for that as well to sign up and list your skills and any areas of special interest.
Very awesome, man.
And of course, follow me on Twitter at Billand_Mike.
BILLAND_Mike. There he is. And catch him on the Ralph Report soon. The Ralph Retort soon on the Kill Stream.
I'll send him an email after
it's looking like you're going to get on there. So
awesome.
I'm excited for your prospects. I think you are the as a Texan, honestly, like dead serious mode as a Texan. I need someone like you representing us more than someone like Crenshaw. So I'm here to help in any way I can, man.
Hey, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for having me on. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk soon.
We'll meet you too in Florida.
Yeah, dude, it was great meeting you. Like I had heard of you, but I didn't know who you were. But it was a great interaction. So
it was.
Absolutely, man. But we'll chat soon. We can do another video again down the road. Not a big deal.
Awesome. I'd love it.
All right. Later. Have a good one, man.
You too. Bye-bye.